vaccinate, a top threat to global health. Are anti-vaxxers the very controversial topic that already has our community talking? Vaccinations. Last month, the World Health Organization declared the reluctance or refusal to vaccinate a top threat to global health. Are anti-vaxxers making us ill? Stay tuned.
One of the central tenets of the anti-vaccine movement is to claim that vaccines lead to autism. But from studies involving now over 1 million children, there is a massive amount of data showing there's absolutely no link between vaccines and autism. And as a vaccine scientist and as a parent of now an adult with autism associated intellectual disabilities, I can say we've learned so much about what autism really is and how it begins in prenatal development, during fetal development, early in pregnancy.
So basically, this guy's calling Robert Kennedy Jr. an idiot. You know, I know he's not an idiot, but maybe we'll just look into some of what he has to say, because he's definitely, for a long time, been harping upon this idea that the mercury in the flu vaccines, or in vaccines, mercury is used to, or was used, I think still is used, to preserve the vaccines so that they'll last, so that you can store them for long periods of time, so that people will have access to them, so that they're there and they don't, you know, break down, whatever, so that you have access to them. And even the CDC, and because I read on the CDC site that they believed there was a link between, I don't remember whether it was autism per se, but they said that the mercury was a problem. And other people said it's worth the risk, and you know, there was a variety of opinions on it. But it's just, you know, it's obvious to me that mercury is not a good thing to inject your kids with. Now, there's different kinds of mercury. Obviously, it's not the silver kind of mercury in a thermometer, or you'd be dead as soon as you shot it up. But I don't know. We'll look into that more at some point. We'll listen to what Robert F. Kennedy has to say. Maybe he's got something more current. I'll see if I can find something from him. But this isn't really about autism, and I mean, he's framing that because he thinks he can throw out the statistics that say that autism is definitely not caused by vaccines. Well, it's not caused by vaccines. It's if it is caused by vaccines, it's caused from the mercury, the preservative. And that isn't the issue. I mean, it just seems so obvious that the big pharma, the big money, is going to hire somebody like him to come out and use the fact that they've tested and said that, and who did the testing, and who paid for the testing, and who paid for the reports and all that. And how does saying that vaccines do not cause autism say that we're not being over-vaccinated so that some people can make a lot of money? Okay? Now, what I'm going to show you is the big pharma and the World Health Organization, not so much the World Health Organization just sat back and didn't say anything, okay? But the CDC and others, the FDA for sure, they actually promoted this. I mean, you're supposed to give your kids like 25 vaccines, 25 shots. And they're trying to make it mandatory. Now, I can understand, you know, if there's an epidemic of some kind, making it mandatory, you know, as a national security issue or a national health. No, I think it has to rise to a national security issue. It's still a health issue, but when you say national security, you know, and you have to be careful, because stealing oil around the world, like Trump talks about how he wants to steal Venezuela's oil. The only way that that's even possible is if you can make a powerful national security argument, and it's got to be so powerful that it overrides the fact that you're becoming a criminal, that you're evil, you know, or animalistic. You're fighting to survive, survival of the fittest. Go steal people's oil, force people to vaccinate because people are dropping dead all over the place. Now, is that legitimate? Is it legitimate in the case of oil? Let's look into these things. But I don't, personally, I'm going to tell you that my opinion is every time you fail God, and my version of God is a lot different from, I'm not a Christian or anything, but every time you fail, see, it's just like back in the old days, before the Industrial Revolution, to say somebody was a failure or that they failed, it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with economics or the economy or your job, losing your job or not being able to provide for your children and your wife. If you failed, it was because you failed God. It was a moral and an ethical issue. It was only after the Industrial Revolution and this culture that we've developed, this consumer whatever culture, Machiavellian type of culture, neo-liberal, conservative culture, that failure became just financial failure, or you're a loser, you know. And we know how there's all kinds of things that relate to that, like the criminalization of poverty and all that kind of stuff, and all the other capitalistic, predatory capitalism and stuff like that. So, to me, if you, any time that you sacrifice your morals and your ethics, you failed. I don't believe in the ends justifies the means. I believe in the means are the ends. You are what you do. So if you kill Hitler, well, that's a bad example. I mean, there's nothing wrong with killing really evil, bad people. Okay, if you kill an innocent little kid walking down the street, and turns out that he was going to become Hitler someday, or that he was carrying the, super Ebola virus, and you managed to stop the whole world from being destroyed. Well, call me crazy, but I think that it would have been better if the whole world had been destroyed than you killing that one innocent kid. Or who's to say the world would have been destroyed? Or who's to say anything about the future when it comes to doing something evil like that? See, I learned a long time ago, you have to wait and see. You know, I've been through times in my life where I was scared to death and thought that I needed to act. And I said, nope. You know, I'm not going to go try to rob a bank or steal a car or deal drugs. Although dealing drugs, I don't think is a really bad way of surviving. But instead I said, well, I'm going to sit here and wait, or maybe go look for a job or whatever, and see how things turn out. Because that's really a perfect example of, what do you call it? Enticement. You know, the devil. I can't think of the word, so you can just fill in the blank. It's where you're being encouraged to do something bad out of fear and anger and emotion and stuff. Sometimes it's really late and I've got a bit of a headache, so I'm sorry if I can't articulate as well as usual. So, you know, okay, let's go all the way back to this. What I'm saying is these guys, they're making points that whether they're true or not, they're irrelevant. So whether or not they have proved that the mercury in vaccines doesn't cause autism or not, it's irrelevant, because it's not really about the argument. The argument here is that the WHO, World Health Organization, CDC, FDA, are in cahoots with Big Pharma to make money for rich people. Now, we can say for sure that rich people are making tons of money off of Big Pharma and the medical system in general, you know, all the scams, all the stealing from Medicaid, Medicare, and all that kind of stuff. And I've made it real clear in other episodes and in my group that I have two groups. I have Americans for Single Payer, and I have Americans Against Medical Fraud and Abuse. And both are loaded up with proof of basically the conspiracy between rich people, the government, the parts of the government that they own and run, the FDA and all that kind of crap, and the whole industry, medical and pharmacological, pharmaceutical, just to funnel money out of basically we're born into this world as slaves to these rich people, and through medicine and buying gas and consumer, you know, buying cars, renting houses, owning houses, apartments, water, electricity, insurance. Between all of that, you know that the ultra rich and the rich and their thugs are just draining us, just sucking us dry, and that's how they maintain control of the economic system and of us. You know, they have all that money, they can dump it into the media and get 90% of these idiots out there to believe anything they want them to believe, which makes it impossible for anybody on our side, the victims, the sheeple who are getting drained of their blood, of their money anyway, and their freedom and all that. There's no way for us to fight back. I mean, our time is all taken up with dealing with the system that they've created for us, and the system also punishes anybody who dares to speak up. Like they put me in jail for 3 months just now because they didn't like what I had to say about them. They're going to say I threatened to blow up the Department of Community-Based Services, SNAP, the food stamp office building. Nothing could be further from the truth. But that's how they do it. When they see you complain about them, they just sick the police on you and take whatever you're doing and turn it around into a crime committed by you and throw you in jail. I mean, that's the reality here. So, I'm sure that anybody who gets up and says anything like Robert F. Kennedy saying what he had to say, I'm sure that, I know, I've been watching, tons of money poured into fighting him and Mike Papatonio. And we'll have a look see if we can find something recent on, I think it's Thermisol or something like that. Let's see what the current, it certainly isn't, this that we're hearing right here certainly is not the end of that argument. But it's also not the bigger argument. The bigger argument is that they're crushing us, right? With their enormous system that is just designed to make them money. So let's let them finish here saying what they've got to say, and then we'll go to an article that talks about, because once you lose people's trust, it's very hard to get it back. And once people point out the fact that there is a conspiracy, that there is a huge conspiracy going on between the rich and the pharmaceuticals and the medical establishment, etc., you're gonna, I mean, why should anybody believe you ever again? It's not like proving that conspiracy was what you needed to know that that's what was going on. You knew that already. You just got some proof. And then you know that it's going to continue to go on, right? I mean, just getting caught and just having some public opinion rise against you is not going to stop you from collecting your check, cashing in. So, okay, so that's it. We'll listen to this.
Before kids ever see vaccines, so there's not even a possibility that vaccines into autism.
According to the WHO, vaccination is one of the most cost-effective ways of avoiding disease. It prevents 2 to 3 million deaths a year, and a further 1.5 million could be avoided if global coverage of vaccination.
And now, that's certainly going to be true when you have these filthy countries that are full of cholera, full of malaria. You vaccinate the entire population, just like when polio was a huge problem in the United States. Of course you do. Of course you vaccinate everybody. If you've got a good vaccine, the one that works, it wouldn't even matter if it caused autism or some kind of severe side effects. You'd do it anyway. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the United States, and they're throwing in international shit. They're saying, oh, Americans need to give their kids 25 vaccinations because there's a massive malaria outbreak in Central Africa. I mean, what the fuck? Do they really expect us to buy this argument?
Improved. But measles has seen a 30% increase worldwide since 2016. And though not all cases are linked to vaccine hesitancy, many countries that were close to eliminating the disease, like the United States, Australia, and the UK, have seen a resurgence.
Globally, the number of parents...
A resurgence? Even if you could qualify it as a resurgence, it's nothing. Who do you know who's had measles? Where I've not heard of one case of measles in Kentucky. And for the last 3 months I've been in jail watching the local news. I don't have any choice. I hate it. It sucks. We've had some hepatitis, especially in jail. And that's all because of intravenous drug use, as it turns out, as I learned very well in jail. Anyway, so, again, a non-issue.
Parents refusing to have their children vaccinated.
You know, I'm just coming to the point when I listen to this particular show here. Al Jazeera is very well known to be very propagandistic, supports the United States when it comes to Venezuela. I think they spout total bullshit, all the lies that you hear from the United States. Al Jazeera reiterates them on their show. Well, this is starting to sound like that.
It remains small, although research shows the so-called anti-vaxxer movement is growing. So here with us to discuss, Dr. Pauline Patterson is an assistant professor and co-director of the vaccine.
Yeah, and why is that? You know, are they going to talk about their side? Are they going to talk about the anti-vaxxers' side? No, of course not. They're going to talk about why anti-vaxxers are wrong.
Confidence Project at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And Dr. Kate O'Brien, director of the World Health Organization Department of Immunization, Vaccines, and Biologicals. Welcome to the stream, both of you.
So they got two women here who are obviously part of the problem, and they're going to make their their argument for vaccinations, and it's very much going to be irrelevant what they say.
I want to start with our community because there's already a pretty heated discussion online as soon as we mentioned that we were discussing this topic. And this is what some of it looks like. This is what we got live on YouTube. Arcade writes in, the paranoia around vaccines is justified and well-founded. They go on, they elaborate in this comment saying, it's prudent to be cautious. It's been well documented that big pharma companies and government scientists performed experiments on people with injections promising they were quote-unquote cures, talking about past examples. Kate, tackle this for us because there is a lot of misinformation out there, but some of it, for some people, is based on historical fact.
Yeah, as you started the segment.
Okay. That's not enough. She's clearly playing this down, and she's going to allow them to try and tear it up. The fact is that the conservative medical establishment has a history of horror. I mean, if we were to go back and take what the conservatives have done, I mean, Nazi doctors and American conservative movements for sterilization of black people, purposely giving certain people in jails and in the military syphilis. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. So the only way that this is going to look good for them is if these two doctors lie right now and just debunk the entire past, the past is fucked for them. They don't have, so let's just see how they try to escape this news here.
I think one of the most important messages is that, as you said, 2 to 3 million lives, babies' lives generally, are saved every year because of the vaccines that we have in routine use. And yet 1 in 10 kids is not vaccinated when you look around the world. And
see, now that's a number that relates to what I was just talking about, like vaccinating people against malaria and cholera and stuff in third world countries. So that's nonsense. She right there is taking a worldwide thing and applying it to the United States and trying to say, see, you need to get your kids vaccinated.
kids, especially who are not vaccinated, are the children who are most vulnerable. Kids who live in very vulnerable circumstances and are exposed because of their living circumstances to many of the germs that are causing disease and death and are completely vaccine preventable. It's natural that people would have concerns about whether these vaccines are safe, whether they're going to protect their children. I think every parent wants to assure that they're doing the best for their children. We have incredible safety programs now to assure that our vaccines have the highest ability to protect against disease and the
That's bullshit.
highest capacity to deliver them in a really safe way.
That's bullshit. And you'll see in the little article. I mean, it's just a short little article. It'll just completely crush everything she just
Well,
said.
I'm just wondering, you're the director of the Vaccine Confidence Project, and you know about the fears.
So they're having a girl on here, a woman on here, whose whole job is to try and make people feel good about vaccines.
And the myths associated with vaccines. How do we even have the conversation responsibly so we don't scare people as we're trying to inform them?
Well, how about if you actually have two other people on, or just one for the vaccines people, and have an anti-vaxxer on? You don't have there's no anti-vaxxer on here, and there's no anti-vaxxer information. Alright, I'm going to go straight to the article now, because I can't stand to watch this. It's too much. So let's see, here we go. This is it. And thank God for Anonymous, huh? Thank God. V for Vendetta.
World Health Organization finally cracks down on Big Pharma by Paul ASSA after considerable pressure from independent health journalists, researchers, statisticians, and some MDS. Finally, the World Health Organization WHO responded positively. Now the WHO is proposing public access to all drug trial papers. Why is this important? Because by the time the study is completed, all the reports are often collated and edited to offer only the most glowing parts of the trial outcomes while hiding adverse event reports. Sometimes pharmaceutical companies will hire ghostwriters to put the final report together and pay a physician to sign off on it as though he or she had written it. The final report is what gets submitted to a medical journal, peer-reviewed, and sent to everyone in the medical field, showing great results with minimal or no adverse effects. Big Pharma fraud, then it becomes FDA approved, for a fee from the pharmaceutical company, and it goes to market where the reports hidden or swept under the rug manifest as serious adverse effects and deaths among many consumers over several years, during which the patent-holding drug company rakes in the bucks while real-life casualties head up. Class action suits are filed, and whatever losses are incurred from these suits are easily absorbed by Big Pharma as merely the costs of doing business. Enter text you wish spoken here.
Okay, that's perfect. That's exactly true. Everything they said here is exactly true. And that's a general overview of the system and how it works. And that is why we have no faith in you. We have absolutely no faith in you. Yeah, we have faith in vaccines, you know, but you guys have proven that you're out to make money. I mean, it's just like we have no faith in establishment Democrats. Because if they get $1 million from Monsanto, then we know whose agenda they're going to follow. And we know where you guys are coming from. You are paid shills, you people. Okay, I'm going to have a look for the latest on Robert F. Kennedy and the thimerosal issue. It's not the core issue. Whether it turns out to be a big thing with autism or not, it's not the core issue. And if he's wrong about thimerosal and stuff, and lead or mercury and vaccines causing autism, or maybe it causes other things, that's really not the issue. They'd like to make it that because they think they can prove that it's bullshit. And maybe it is. But I can tell you one thing that isn't bullshit, and that's all the other bad side effects that are caused by, and I mean, my sites, my groups, my Facebook groups that I talked about, my, single payer, Americans for Single Payer and Americans Against Medical Fraud and Abuse, just piled full of examples. The most recent is a drug that my mother took. I don't remember the name of it, but it's to help reduce clotting. And the company went to China and paid them to do a report and then sent their people over there and doctored the report. Turned out lots of people started dying here in the United States of bleeding, because this is supposed to stop clots, so it like thins out your blood. It's a blood thinner, but the only problem is there's nothing you can do when you start bleeding. If you take the older medicines for blood thinners, they have a cure for bleeding. So if you start bleeding, they can give you this stuff and stops you from bleeding. This one, they don't. So you start bleeding, you die. Very often. I mean, yeah, they're going to do everything they can to keep you alive, but I mean, basically, they lied, they murdered people, and then they want us to trust them. You see where I'm coming from? I mean, this isn't some fairy tale thing. These people here, they want us to believe, it's just all a big fairy tale, this, anti-vaxxers and stuff. So I'll come back here in a bit. I'm going to have a look around and see what else I can find. Okay, so I'm finding this interesting. This is a fairly recent, I think, 2017, middle of, not last year, but the year before. So it's not new, but it's newer than, I've been listening to Robert F. Kennedy talk about this for years, and he's a lefty, so I don't care if it's on Fox News, it's him. And hey, if he can get Trump to do something good, so let's hear what he has to say. Let's hear, and what we're going to find out is that it has nothing to do with being anti-vax.
Well, the vast majority of medical experts insist that vaccines are generally safe and that there is no link between vaccines and autism, and that is widely accepted, but not universally. President Trump has expressed interest in investigating the matter further, vaccine safety. If he does, he has at least one supporter from a prominent Democratic family. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. met earlier this year with the president to discuss the possibility of forming a commission to investigate the safety of vaccines. We spoke to him about that topic recently. Watch. So this is such a taboo subject that I think a lot of people would hesitate even to bring it up. But I've read a lot that you've written on it. I don't agree with all of it, but I don't think you're crazy. You're not anti-vaccine. You say you vaccinate your own children, but you have concerns. Tell me first what the reaction is when you tell people you're skeptical of the vaccine regimen in the United States.
Well, like you said, I'm pro-vaccine. I've never said anything anti-vaccine, but I read the science, and the science is very clear that some of the vaccines, and what you have to understand is that the vaccine regimen changed dramatically around 1989. The reason it changed, Tucker, is that Congress, drowning in pharmaceutical industry money, did something they've never done for any other industry. They gave blanket legal immunity to all the vaccine companies so that no matter how sloppy the line protocol calls, no matter how absent the quality control, no matter how toxic the ingredient or egregious the injury to your child, you cannot sue them. So there's no depositions, there's no discovery, there's no class action suits. All of a sudden, vaccines became enormously profitable.
From that point, from '89 when the law passed.
And in '87, it was implemented, and then there was a gold rush by the pharmaceutical industry to add new vaccines to the schedule. So I got 3 vaccines, and I was fully compliant. I'm 63 years old. My children got 69 doses of 16 vaccines to be compliant. And a lot of these vaccines aren't even for communicable, casually communicable diseases like hepatitis B, which comes from unprotected sex, or, sharing needles. Why do we give that to a child the first day of their life? And it was loaded with mercury.
And we do give that to children.
We continue to give it to them. The mercury has been taken out of 3 vaccines in this country, but it remains in the flu vaccine, 48 million flu vaccines, and it's in vaccines all over the world. And it is the most potent neurotoxin known to man that is not radioactive. How can we inject that into a child? If you take that vaccine vial and break it, you have to dispose of that as hazardous waste. You have to evacuate the building. Why would we take that substance and inject it into a little
So the
baby?
argument, as you know, is that group immunity, herd immunity is what you're searching for, and yes, there are downsides, but in the big picture, everybody
immunity is, when they talk about herd immunity, they're talking about casually contagious diseases like measles.
Right.
Last month, a group of very prestigious scientists with a robust study of African children studied the DBT, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus vaccine.
Yeah.
Which is the most widely distributed vaccine in the world. Virtually every kid in Africa gets it. What they found, they did a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, which has never been done. And what they found was that the kids who did not get the vaccine, the kids who got the vaccine, the little babies, were 10 times as likely to die in the next 2 months as the kids who did not. And what they concluded was, and this study was funded by the Danish government, and again, these people are very bulletproof scientists, they said that that vaccine is killing more people than diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis combined. So we need to do those cost-benefit analyses on every vaccine.
So why, and this is a final question, but why has the point that you're making, that doesn't seem crazy, been so discredited? Could it be because the spokesmen for that point of view tend to be actresses from Hollywood or actors who don't seem to know much about the topic and are against all vaccinations? That has...
I think that cohort is out there, but it's very, very small. And I think, I'm called anti-vax all the time because the pharmaceutical industry is so powerful, both with the media. They give $5.4 billion a year to the media. And they've gotten rid of the lawyers, so there's no legal interest in those cases. And they really have been able to control the debate and silence people like me. And I'm very grateful to you for having the courage to allow me on the show and talk and say, this is the second show in 10 years that's allowed me to talk about this, the other one being Bill Maher, which doesn't take advertising.
I just think it's interesting. And above all, I think you ought to be allowed to ask legitimate questions without being attacked, because I think that's the basis of democracy.
I mean, we ought to be having a responsible debate, and, you know, a debate that doesn't scare people.
Right.
But a debate that's real and it's based on science.
Well, I hope you start.
I'm sorry, I find the men extremely credible. I have for years. I watched Ring of Fire or listened to it. And just every time he was on, because he wasn't on all the time, it's mostly Mike Papantonio, who's now on Russian television. I'm sure all the nutjob establishment Democrats would just jump down my throat. Oh, Russian television. We're all owned by the Russians. No, bullshit. Russian television employs Americans like Mike Papantonio and Jesse Ventura and even Larry King, who I don't really like that much. But all those guys, because they're great and they're loved, they have a huge audience, not as huge as they could if they weren't so screwed by our bullshit CIA-owned media in the United States. So, you know, I mean, all I'm saying is this guy, I loved him on Ring of Fire. I love people and love to watch things because they make sense. I'm highly informed. So if what they're saying fits in with what I know, because I know I'm smart, because I know I'm informed, extremely well read, and that's not read like communists, even though I am a communist. I do believe in the control economy as a far more, I mean, we all know what the capitalist economy is about, right? So, well, we all don't, but most of the people who listen to me will know. So, you know, I agree with everything he said right here. I think he makes good points, and that's nothing. I mean, we could get on to some of these longer things here where he talks for an hour, but you know, you go to here, you can just do Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Robert De Niro off for $100,000. And find out for yourself. Now, there's a ton more of stuff, you know, in here. Actually, this is all stuff for my news show.
So Cory Booker.
So, you know, there's a bunch of stuff here, and I'll just let you look at. I haven't even looked at it yet, so we're looking at this together. This stuff. God damn, these ads. Look at them all piling up here. Who advisor secretly pads pockets with big pharma money. 6 million euros for his research center from the vaccine manufacturer. Yeah. Now, see, when I tell you guys that I have personal experience, see, that's what makes me so powerful as a journalist. I mean, I don't just read stuff and dig up stuff on the internet, which is great. You know, I applaud anybody who does it. I think you'd be stupid not to. But this right here, okay, GlaxoSmithKline, well, actually just the SmithKline. So when my dad was tromping around the world and dragging me along with him to where I watched him raise the Mujahideen and fight the Russians and in Afghanistan. I even am pretty sure I was recruited to go with them. Of course, I didn't, and I don't think my dad would have allowed that anyway. You know, I was only 16, 17. I would have been the first American Taliban, right? In Beirut, running the PLO out of Beirut, shipping them off to Algeria eventually. Saudi Arabia, my dad developed the relationship there. Indonesia, I got to see how we train people in sabotage, assassination, etc. under the oil government of Suharto. Well, when we were back in the United States, you see, the way that these companies, or the way that the intelligence community pays off people is they give them jobs. So even if they're not working in the intelligence field, they'll get a job. Well, SmithKline, they hired my dad. He worked in Palo Alto or Mountain View. I can remember where SmithKline Instruments was. I went there with my dad. He showed me how he was like quality control. My dad, he was nobody. But you work for these people and they get you a job, whether you're qualified or not. I mean, he was a smart guy. He was able to run a quality control line, but he was doing something that you really should have had somebody with probably a master's in engineering, because he was quality controlling the making of circuit boards for medical equipment. Something he knew. Anyway, so he was showing me how they quality control the soldering and stuff with this. I mean, back in the early 70s, they already were soldering under microscopes. It was quite interesting to me. But what I find interesting about it now is that my dad, who was in the intelligence community, was hired by SmithKline. And here we're seeing where GlaxoSmithKline is massive now. I mean, back then they were just an early CIA front. But now GlaxoSmithKline is just... And that's what happens. You know, the CIA takes a little bit of money and spreads it around. And these companies, they just, they balloon, you know, and then they're able to facilitate CIA intelligence activities all over the world with massive funding. I mean, they've just got money, 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 and that's what it's all about, you know, when they want to raise money for the Contras, or to overthrow Mossadegh, or put in the Shah, or whatever. SmithKline Instruments, that's what they were called. So anyway, but you see here where, I mean, there's just, okay, these people here.
If you write anything on your computer, you need to get Grammarly.
I write pretty much all day, every day, and Grammarly makes.
So
in psychology has shown that it's incredibly difficult.
So we have to take what they say with a grain of salt, right? Because we're in here looking at this, and so you got to say, why the fuck should I listen to you when I can just, you know, go through this, you know, just thing after thing after thing. Just unbelievable. All the shit that these Vaxers and the system, a dangerous network of corruption. I mean, I'm sure this would be so you know, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of this, and I think that I've made my point. I think I've won this argument overwhelmingly. And no, I'm not saying that for absolutely sure mercury causes autism. Absolutely not. I don't know that for sure. But you know, it is a very logical conclusion. You know, and if you listen to Robert F. Kennedy, he will point out the correlations that as we gave all these kids this mercury, autism rates went way up. Okay, something else causing it? Lead in paint, poor water, you know, whatever. Entirely possible, even, you know, very possible. WHO report on drug development marred by big pharma leak. You know, it's just going to be one thing after another. Why the corruption of the World Health Organization is the biggest threat to public health. So it's just like Robert F. Kennedy was talking about, okay, they give this vaccine, more of it than anything else in the world, and it turns out that it kills more people than it saves. Like way more. Well, corruption kills too. Well, that's the last one. Okay, here it comes. Oh, okay. I already looked at this one. So this is where I got the thing to start Googling all that stuff. So we're done here. I'm not interested in anything else. Chill to the establishment. Vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers.